Okay, get ready. Here it comes. This is Giant's Causeway, and these are these hex columns. Primarily they talk about hex columns, but they come in squares too, and I'll show you why. And I will show you that they come in blocks and they separate in these blocks, and I know why they do that. These are not anything to do with volcanism, and that is exactly what they claim. This is all volcanic and we know exactly how it happened. No, not correct. Okay, so you're being recorded. Now, what I'm going to talk about is we go back a long time. I don't know, let's say it's 13, 14, 15 years, somewhere around there, where we both started going to Coursera, and you sort of went into the mainstream area, and I, of course, went my way. Is that correct so far?
Yes, it is.
Okay, now, my question to you is, you went to the University of Arizona, right?
Right.
Okay, and you took, what is it, astrobiology?
That's right.
Okay. When was that you took that course?
That was around 2015, I guess.
All right, okay. So it was back when we were both sort of bouncing back and forth. Because I remember talking to you, not a whole, I don't remember all that well, way back, but I remember we crossed paths a few times, and I don't remember why, but so at that time, now you were obviously you knew what I was talking about at that time, about the giants and about this and that and about things in space, right?
That's right.
Okay, and you presented that to your professor at the University of Arizona, and what was his response?
Okay, first of all, before I presented it to him, he talked about something he saw on a visit, a tour in Ireland. And he said something that was, to me, was not the right answer. So I challenged him, with the truth and with the proof. And he came back on a private email telling me that on the course he cannot tell anything about that because he would lose his job.
Oh, God. And I've had other ones do the same thing. And I had some other teachers that they realize, you can't miss it. It's hard to believe that they can get along with just dismissing it for this long. But every single teacher that I had that stepped forward and said, wow, this is amazing, this is fabulous, I try to get back to them. Either I just never could get through to them, or they just never contacted me back, or they told me that, please just forget about me. Don't talk to me ever again, because they knew. And I had some of them, they might have got fired, I don't know. Because if you stand up for yourself, you're in trouble nowadays.
That's right, because it's not the university policy, to tell, anything. You have to go by the book and stay on it.
Right. Now, let me just finish up with you. I know you got to run. You took like 15 different courses, correct?
That's correct.
And
My astrobiology course with the University of Arizona was the second one. The first one was with the from England. From
the University of Manchester, right?
That's right.
Okay, and that was another astrobiology.
Yes.
Okay, and then I know you did a bunch of other things, soil, places. I saw a bunch of stuff. But anyway, I did the same thing. I went to all kinds of different places because we both went through the same deal, Coursera. All right, listen, I got to grab that call. Thank you, Pierre. I will talk to you, brother.
Okay, thank you.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, my friends, the team is being assembled as we speak. What I'm going to be talking about is an interaction between one of my early friends that I did a little bit of research with long ago, about 15 years ago, and it regards a Giant's Causeway and these patterns of these blocks. And he confronted his professor about this, and I will show you what he had to say, because his professor was saying, oh, this is just magma and da. Well, I had shown this to Pierre about the tendons, and the blocks and how they break flat as a pancake because they're built this way. And they come down in these hex patterns, and first of all, they start off with almost a square block. First of all, they have a round one, which is called a rope tendon, a rope. Inside the rope is several different segments, and they come out blocky, like this. Then inside of this there's a ton of these, which are little tiny, and if you could see it, I don't know if you can or not, but every one of these little white spots basically is one of those. And then inside of those little white spots, they come into another one, which gives a hex shape like this. And then they come into another one, which is smaller, and then another one, which is even smaller than that. By the time they hit the end of the tendon, there's just thousands of little fibers coming out of here, like you see here. However, they're built in cables and bundles. And here's what they look like in an electron microscope using spectroscopy, which means different colors. Well, why are they different colors? Over here, they're just white. Well, they look white, and they look blocky. You can see they're blocky. And over here, they're different colors. Well, the different colors, it shows that they're made of different molecular signatures. That gives them different tensile strengths. So some of them are a little more elastic, and some of them are a little tighter. So you get a whole variety of interactions. Some of them bend better than other ones. Some of them give you a stiffness. There's just a ton of stuff going on in every bundle of fibers. It's not just one type of collagen, I believe. And then, well, you can see it. That's what they're showing, and I'll take their word for it. And these are the little blocky structures. Now, that's exactly what we see at Giant's Causeway. The blockies, and up here. Now, this is what I wanted to show, was these are the little blocky tendons. It's little blocks. And right up here, what do you think that is? This is going up into space here. This glued these tendons to muscle, which was right above. And the glue is just stunningly gluey and tough. And this stops right here, dead, like flat as a pancake. It stops right on one of these. And it's just it. It just goes gloop, and it's done. It's stuck. It's hard to believe, but inside of the end membranes, inside the end of the tendons, there's a little area that it just gnarls itself into. And you can see that in this one here. You see it? They didn't cut that. Nobody cut that. That's how it comes out of the box. And somehow that just, that gluey stuff is embedded in here. Now you see, the blood is running out of here and it's draining down this way. So this was its natural intention. This scaly stuff is part of the tendon, just like this here. You see that? That's the same stuff. That right there is the same as this right here. This was just laying there, and they scaled all this other stuff off because they only wanted this piece inside. That's the tough stuff. This will scale off. I know you can see that. Now, so what they were going to do with this is they got some holes in it, and they're just going to snap it up, and then one big guy will come over, grab it, and carry it somewhere, put it down wherever he wants. All right, I said I had the same stuff in my shop as this. Here it is right here. There it is. That's the tendon. And you see it stops just as flat as a pancake. Now this one here, they have to move independently. You see how this one is stepped back a little bit? And this one's kind of straight across, but they have this seam in between each strap, and they have to be able to slide in and out against each other in order for you to have mobility and twist and do all these sort of things. Now, this is the glue, and that is just as strappy and nasty and gnarly as anything you could ever imagine. And then right up here, the muscle starts to go. So a tendon locks to a bone, the glue holds the tendon, muscle gets glued into the glue, and that is basically an abrupt transition. All right, so anyway, getting back to this story about Pierre, my buddy. this goes back, like I said, I think maybe I mentioned like 15 years, and we're talking about this stuff, and how did they do this, and how did this happen, how did they build with these things, who moved them, and they, you know, all kinds of things. And I showed him my Mudfossil, you know, stuff. And at that point, I sort of lost track of them for years, 13 years or so, 14 years. And the other day, I saw a comment where I posted something on Facebook, and he responded. And so I got a hold of him. I said, Pierre, how you doing? Da, da, da. And he went to all kinds of courses. He looked like 15 different courses. I just did a phone discussion with him. I'm going to play that, and you're going to hear what he has to say about his experiences with astrobiology and all. He took like 15 different courses over the course of time in the last 13, 14 years. I haven't really had any correspondence with him. So he sort of went into mainstream. I did not. So, but I know the mainstream. I know everything they know. I know about plagioclases and all pyroxenes and different chemical formulas and everything. I know everything about it. But this is biology. It's not just popped out of the ground from magma. I know their side. They need to know my side. And Pierre does. So what happens? He confronts his professor. And that was like 14 years ago, because he's taking astrobiology at the university. Well, he took several places, but I'm going to let him explain it. Hold on. Okay, my friends, this is coming together. That phone call was from a very senior geologist, works with the Army Corps of Engineers, and I am going to discuss this structure here, which is on Mount Ararat, and I think it could be Noah's Ark. And he just called, and I am going to be doing a video with him momentarily. And this will explain what we're seeing here. And I just don't think they understood the sizes of the things that were realistic and never considered to be realistic. All right, so I'm going to be talking with Jim Boland, who is, he was with the Army Corps of Engineers, and fully understands mainstream geology. Now, I worked with him several years ago, and we sort of lost touch and back and forth, but he contacted me and he said, you know, let's talk about these things. I guess it's been, you know, he's been thinking about them, so I'm going to talk with him. So anyway, he just called. I got to call him back. We're going to be doing a video and a shocker du jour, and I'm almost certain that is Noah's Ark. I would be very surprised if it's not. You look at the evidence when it's presented, it's up to you to make your own determination. But I think that's what it was. Okay, my friends, this is my claim. This could very well be Noah's Ark. That's Mount Ararat. It's much bigger than what was shown as Noah's Ark, but it fits exactly the dimensions if you use the plethysron instead of a cubit, which is 100 feet instead of a cubit, which is very small. Now, this is the structure of the Ark, and this right here is where they would have kept the animals, and the stuff would have drained off on the sides. This is over 600 feet wide, and it runs the full length of this boat, if it was a boat. And all that stuff ran off to the sides and eventually poured down into here. This thing was huge. It would have poured down at the end, coming off of all that debris, and run down into here where it's creating green stuff, because it's all manure probably and things like that. Very green down here and very green at the bottom, because that's where the runoff would have gone from the animals that were in this Ark. And it fits very, very closely. And it has the pitch, which was a very important factor, that they had to have pitch inside and out. And this is extra pitch that would have been in here to patch up as things were needed inside the boat. And it landed exactly what they said on Mount Ararat. And it fits exactly if you use a 100-foot measurement. So it's going to be a little loud, the presentation in the background, because there'll be air conditioning going on. It's hotter than Hades. Now, this whole area here is very interesting. But anyway, I'm just going to jump into it. I'm going to have a senior scientist, a senior environmental scientist guy that really understands this stuff, to talk about these different materials that are in what I consider to be Noah's Ark. It could be. We'll find out. We're going to look into it. We may never know for sure, but it's something to consider, because nobody's ever considered the size of the creatures. They thought the human beings were just little people, 10, 12 feet tall tops. These people were hundreds of feet tall. They could make a boat like this.